Okay, hello from me, guys. As Rob said, I'm the Learning Support Coordinator at an international school. So that means that I wear many hats. On my day-to-day work, I have to help students who are ELL, they have learning disorders, or they actually ELL with learning disorders, on learning how to read, how to write, how to speak English, the vocabulary, the comprehension. So one of the things that I like to use, because I'm not very savvy with technology, as you can see from the black image of what's supposed to be me on your screen, is I use picture prompts. Now, they do say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I do believe that, because photographs or cartoons or anything that is visual allows our students to imagine and to bring their own personality and points of view and culture and background and history into the lesson, and that gets them really excited, because nothing is black and white in a picture. Everything is open to interpretation. So it's a huge inspiration in any classroom that has typical and atypical learners, and it really works well with tactile, visual and kinesthetic learners as well. What I want to do with you this evening is to discuss two techniques that I use in regards to picture prompts. The first one is picture word inductive model, and I utilize this with my low, intermediate and more advanced ESL and ELL students. And then thought bubbles, which is what I use with my beginners and up to low, intermediate learners. So let's get to it. I only have a few more minutes. So I'm going to take you, I'm going to do an example with you of a picture word inductive model, and I'm going to walk you through it. So the first thing I do is I show a picture to my students as a group, as a whole class. Now, there's two different types of pictures that you can use. The first one would be just a separate single picture, and it could be something as simple as a tree or a dog eating a bone, or as crazy as the whale on top of a plane that you see in front of you. Or if you're going more to the intermediate level, you could show a series of pictures that together make up a story. And what the students have to do is they have to brainstorm 20 words related to the picture or the series of pictures. And now they can do that as a whole class. So 20 words for the whole class. They can do that as small groups, or they can come up with a specific number of words per person, and then we put them together. The second thing that we do, so the second step, is we create categories. So we create umbrella themes for those words, and that's really good because they put them in the content. If you want to go towards grammar, what you can do is you can have nouns, you can have adjectives, you can have verbs. If you want to take it more towards meaning, you can even have the character's name, or things from the picture, and you name them, and then you have that as category. And what the students have to do is they have to fit the words that they wrote down under each category. And what you see is a lot of times students have very strong opinions about which word goes under which category, and it's a really fun discussion, and it gets them really excited. And then they come up with different words, and they talk about, what does this word mean? Can we use another one? What's a synonym? And you bring in synonyms, antonyms, what's a verb, what's a noun into this whole discussion. Now, the next step is we take these words, and students, either in small groups or on an individual level, I do this with small groups, and I group my students based on level or English proficiency. They create sentences about these pictures, and they put them into categories that they create on their own. So you start with a word, or maybe 2-3 words, and then you create a sentence with those words. And then when you do that, you're working on punctuation, you're working on grammar, you're working on syntax, you're working on vocabulary. You pretty much bring everything into writing sentences. And the categories that you can create, it can either be based again on the characters, the themes, or really easy, you can create a timeline if you're using a series of pictures. So, you know, first, second, third, and it gets the kids really excited because it might be one picture, you know, one visual prompt, but then when you have small groups, you see so many different categories and sentences, and it can range from very pragmatic, I see a dog, to the very crazy ones and descriptive ones, which are always hilarious to read. Now, the last step that I do is, and this is depending on the level of the students, is we take these sentences and we create stories, we create essays. Now, if a student is a beginner, obviously it could be a 3-sentence paragraph. If we have an intermediate student, it could be, you know, 2, 3, 5 paragraph essay, but then you get some students who are so excited and when they create something and you get 2, 3 pages out of them. And the great thing about this is that you start with one visual prompt. However, by the end of the lesson, you get 10 or 20 different paragraphs and stories, and they vary because every student sees something else in that picture. The last thing we do is the kids have to choose the titles, and this is what I do as a whole class. We read the paragraphs or the stories out loud, and the kids get to decide on a very funny title for everyone's paragraph or story, and it gets them again really excited. Now, I'm going to move on to my thought bubbles, and this is something that I use with my very young or learners that are just starting to learn English and to write. Thought bubbles are great because it can take a one-dimensional character or image, and it makes it from static to something with a personality. And usually, the personality that comes out is the students. And this is for characters in photos, cartoons, and I'm going to show you in the next 2-3 slides how I use them. Now, there's different ways to do this. The first one is to take individual pictures and characters, and this could be based on books that you've read, so they have the background knowledge. This could be something that has to do with, let's say, I included a zombie because Halloween was just around the corner, was just a couple of weeks ago. So it could be something that has to do with, you know, a celebration, but it doesn't just have to be one thought bubble. It could be 2 characters, 1 sentence each, and then you have a dialogue. Simple as that. And this is great for really young students or for students who are just getting engaged with English, and it's really hard for them to bring their verbal knowledge of the language into writing. The next thing I can do with them is, and this is more advanced, you create stories with speech bubbles. And there's 3 different levels that I like to use. The first one is you have a very explicit storyline. So there's no way that a student can misunderstand what's been shown to them, like a phone conversation. All they have to do is, based on the storyline, is create the dialogue that leads them to the last picture. This is something very basic, and it's one of the first story creation models that I use. The second one is you give them again a story, a visual story, like a comic book. However, it's open to interpretation. The story through the visual prompts is not very clear to what's happening, so the student has to create their own narrative, and that gets them again really excited, and it can range from something very graphic to something very shocking, or it could be very hilarious. The third one that I use is a blank comic book styled page, and this is where the kids really have to be their own writers and their own creators and their own producers. They have to create a story from start to finish, and they have to do the pictures, the narrative, the heroes, the setting, and the dialogue. And I always at the end like to have a little theater, a little drama, and I get them to act out these stories, and they get so excited and they think it's hilarious. So this is something that I use across the board with every typical and atypical learner, ELL, SEN, any type. They love it. They go crazy for it. The last thing I do, and this is for kids who might struggle to use thought bubbles, is when I'm reading a book and you get some kids who don't necessarily have the vocabulary or the comprehension, and they look at the pictures, so they understand the story through the pictures. So what I do is with Post-its, I stick them on books, and then purely based on the pictures, they have to imagine and write what the characters are thinking or saying. And this is a great way to get kids to fall in love with characters and books and to get them excited, because sometimes what happens is if it's a book and they don't get it, then they feel like they failed and they stop reading. And that makes me very sad as a teacher. So this is a way to bring books into everyday learning and to get them excited and active in reading books and using them. So this was my talk. Hopefully, I know some of you had trouble with sound as well and you couldn't even see me, but I did my best, and hopefully you got some great information and techniques to use in your class.